Hello, Jeremy Nicholas here. I wanted to talk to you about three ways that the bail bond industry saves the taxpayer money. There's a large population in America that doesn't even know that the bail bond industry saves the taxpayer money. They don't know what the bail bond industry does, and I'm wanting to make these videos to educate the public, whoever can watch, about our industry and what we actually do. Three ways the bail bond industry saves the taxpayer money. One is housing. Two is in the event of a failure to appear, and three is in matters of extradition. When I say housing, I'm talking about housing inmates. Housing inmates is a very, very, very expensive undertaking that the taxpayer is responsible for in the state of Missouri, in any state in the United States. And by the bail bondsman's presence, we are able to release those defendants. The taxpayer is no longer responsible for the safe housing of that defendant, and the defendant can go on about his life or her life and prepare for their upcoming court cases. And the second way is in the event of a failure to appear. Often the taxpayer is again burdened by the county law enforcement or the city law enforcement having to find that defendant and locate them, arrest them, and bring them back to the jail, and again housing that defendant. Many times, in the instance of there being a bail bond posted, we're able to get that defendant in front of the judge without them having to be rearrested. We are able to agree to remain on the bond of the defendant, which happens quite often because many failure to appears are instances of I forgot or any other array of either excuses or legitimate reasons why that defendant failed to appear. But that housing of the defendant before they're able to see a judge simply does not occur. The third way, and probably the least known about way that the bail bond industry saves the taxpayer exponentially is in extradition. Extradition is the path, if you will, by which we bring people back into the jurisdiction of the court in which they were charged. So if a defendant's charged with a crime and they post bond and they fail to appear on their court date, and the defendant is actually trying to evade the court date and the responsibility that they agreed to, the court date they agreed to show up to, it is the bail bondsman's responsibility not only to find that defendant, not only if they can't find that defendant, to pay the face amount of the bond, which that money is then generally transferred to a county school fund. They are also responsible for the extradition costs of bringing that defendant back. So they have the first opportunity to go to that state and arrest that defendant. I use the word arrest. It's not actually a legal arrest. The bail bondsman has a civil contract that defendant signed, and they may be taken into custody anywhere and brought back into the state of Missouri. If that state is not a reciprocating state with Missouri, if they would not allow a bail bondsman to go into their state and remove that defendant, they can be extradited by the way that we would normally, any state would normally extradite a defendant that's charged with a criminal offense. The difference is that if they are on bond, the bail bond company is financially responsible for paying that extradition. That's all spelled out by the Missouri Supreme Court. Those are three ways, and maybe more, that the taxpayer is relieved of a burden that they shouldn't have to pay in the first place. The taxpayers paid for the crime in many cases. It baffles me that why the taxpayers should have to pay for the release of the defendant. And to make sure that that defendant shows up to his court dates when we have private companies that are willing to assume that responsibility. And as long as we keep those private companies regulated, well regulated, and in check, and those private entities remain accountable to the state, they treat these offenders or potential offenders humane. There's no reason why this program doesn't work. It has worked for hundreds of years. It has been reformed before, and we are open to reform now. We are the ones of us that are worth our weight are asking for reform. In fact, we're begging for it. So if you hear about pretrial release in your area, other than the bail bond industry, study it. Study it all you want to. But don't study the bail bond industry based on what you see on TV. Actually study it. Talk to a local bail bondsman that's been in business for a number of years, that has a brick and mortar location in your town, not somebody riding out of their trunk of their car. And our Department of Insurances, respective state to state, need to get together, and we need to stop the fly-by-nights that are occurring because of loosened regulations. Thanks for listening.